The shortest effective name of God is the Tetragrammaton. This was the name recorded in the Bible, the one the high priests of Israel would speak in the Temple of Solomon. The rabbis said it was so holy that God would smite any impure person who said it. Some of them went on wild flights of raptures about the holiness of this name. Said it was the Shem HaMepharash, the holiest name of all. In these more enlightened times, we know better. We call it the mortal name. And it just so happens to be a name whose power is to kill the speaker. As the shortest name, it kept working long after the flow of divine light into the universe had dropped to a trickle. There were records of men dying by speaking the mortal name as late as Jesus' time. If the Kabbalists had just said, "Yup, names do lots of things. This one kills whoever says it," then there would have been no problem. But this was back when Rabbi Shimon was working on the Zohar, and the Kabbalists were still underground, sometimes literally. So instead, everybody assumed a name powerful enough that God smote anyone who said it must have been very important, and people kept trying to say it to prove their holiness and kept dying. They worked out this whole horrible system. On Yom Kippur, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies in the temple, place his hands upon the Ark of the Covenant, and speak the Tetragrammaton. The theory was that if the holiest person went into the holiest place on the holiest day and touched the holiest thing, maybe that would be enough holiness to speak the Tetragrammaton and live to tell about it. Did it work? The Bible is silent on the subject, but Rabbi Class of Brooklyn points out that during the 420 years of the Second Temple, there were 300 different high priests, even though each high priest was supposed to serve for life. Clearly, high priests of Israel had the sorts of life expectancies usually associated with black guys in horror movies. Also, some medieval manuscripts mention that the high priest would have a rope tied around his leg at the time, to make it easier for his flock to drag his body out after he died. The Jews naturally got a little bit spooked about the Tetragrammaton after a few centuries of this sort of thing, and the rabbis decreed that any time you needed to use the Tetragrammaton, you should instead substitute the totally different word AI. And then when you were going to say AI, you should substitute that with Hashem, so as to stay 2 semantic steps away from the Tetragrammaton at all times. If they could have, they would have demanded that Hashem be replaced with something else too, except that Hashem literally just meant the name, and so was already maximally vague. It is a well-known fact among Kabbalists that Christians are really dumb. At some point in the AD era, the Christians decided that something Jesus died for our sins. Something made us pure. And they decided to show their deep communion with God by just speaking the Tetragrammaton willy-nilly at random points in their services. Luckily for them, by this point Uriel had pretty well finished blocking the divine light, and their services caused nothing worse than face palms from any Jews who happened to overhear. Then the sky cracked. There very well could have been this huge catastrophe the Sunday afterwards when every Christian church suddenly went up in flames. But the Tetragrammaton is famously difficult to pronounce, and the true pronunciation, which turned out to sound sort of like Jehovah, came as a total surprise to everyone, wasn't in anybody's liturgy, and actually doesn't even quite correspond to the Hebrew letters involved. Thus was the entire Christian religion saved by its inability to pronounce a 4-letter word. If you don't insist on magic powers for your names, there are ones even shorter than this. The Degrammaton is Aleph-lamed, or El. To a Californian like me, that always made places like El Segundo and El Cerrito seem a bit creepy. It wasn't the same sort of primal horror as sticking the Tetragrammaton in the middle of something, but no Kabbalist I know has ever voluntarily eaten at El Pollo Loco either. After thinking about it a while, I'm cool with the Spanish using El as an article. There's something very article-like, articulate, about God. You have your nouns, everything in creation.
And God isn't a part of them, but without God they don't fit together. They don't make sense. The article is what instantiates vague concepts. Pollo Loco is a dream, something out of Braya. El Pollo Loco is more in Yetzirah, an object, a created being. Anna and I had a long discussion about the Diagrammaton once. Jesus calls himself the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end. It makes sense. The Hebrew equivalent would be Aleph and Tav.
But the Diagrammaton is Aleph and lamed. Lamed is the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph lamed, beginning and middle. I am the Alpha and the Lambda, the
The beginning and the middle doesn't have the same ring to it. What's up? And Anna tried to tie this into her own theory of music versus silence versus unsong. There was good, there was neutral, and there was evil. Not just ones and zeros, but ones and zeros and negative ones. God took credit for the good. He even took credit for the neutral, but he didn't take credit for the bad. That was on us. Draw a line from best to worst, and God is everything from beginning to middle. I protested, said that God had created evil along with everything else, that it was on him, that he couldn't just change his name and hope to avoid detection. Anna didn't have an answer then. Later, when she heard all of this explained in more detail, she realized it was the key to the whole mystery, that anyone who understood the N-Grammaton would understand the Shem HaMephorash too, and everything else beside. But that was still long in the future. There's even a monogrammaton. The sages took the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and decided that exactly one of them was a name of God. That letter is He. It's the 5th letter, and it makes an sound like English H. The sages say that the breath makes a sound, which I guess it sort of does. Breath is the animating spirit of human existence. God is the animating spirit of the world. It sort of checks out. He is pronounced like hey or hey. Hey is a word we call to get someone's attention. Attention is consciousness, the highest level of thought corresponding to the Sephirah Keter. When we shout hey at someone, we are speaking a holy name of God, invoking the monogrammaton to call forth the divine within them. Hay is a thing that cows eat. Cows eat hay and we eat cows. We never touch hay, but it is indirectly sustaining us. It is the ontological ground, the secret that gives us life, although we know it not. But He is spelled as He. A long time ago, Anna said the holy explicit name of God was Juan, because God is Juan and His name is Juan. We both laughed it off, but later I was looking through my trusty King James version and started noticing things. Psalm 95:7, He is our God. Psalm 100:3, It is He that hath made us. Job 37:23, He is excellent in power and in judgment. All of these have an overt English meaning, but they are, in their own way, invoking the monogrammaton, and He corresponds to the English letter. HH is for hydrogen, the very beginning of the periodic table, the building block out of which everything else is made. H is the fundamental unit of matter in the universe. AH, the saying goes, is a colorless, odorless gas, which, given enough time, tends to turn into people. How would that make sense unless H was God, the organizing and ordering principle of the cosmos, He who creates all things? And then there was my crazy great-uncle. Invented a bomb that could destroy the world, the deadliest and most terrifying object any human being has ever produced, and slapped an H in front of the name. I still wonder, every so often, if he was a hidden Kabbalist. It takes a certain amount of obsessiveness to be as reckless as he was. That's how I picture him, actually. Studying Torah by night, figuring out new ways to annihilate cities by day. What sort of religion must such a man have? What kind of relationship with God? What soteriology? What theodicy? All I have to guide me is that one old book, the only thing my father gave me. H has become a most troublesome letter. It means something bigger, if not something better. What are we to say to that? May 11th, 2017, San Jose, First. Time and chance, according to the book of Ecclesiastes, happeneth to us all. Anna had planned to sleep in, but it so happeneth that she woke up hungry and found herself out of milk. She threw on an old t-shirt, one she had gotten at a theodicy conference a few years ago, with the motto, Who watches the watchmaker? On the front, grabbed a shopping bag and headed out to the 11 on the corner. 7 represents the world, thus the 7 days of creation, the 7 worldly sephirot below the abyss, and the 7 continents. 11 represents excess, a transcendence of the supernatural completeness of 10 into an unlawful proliferation of forms. Added together they make 18, corresponding to the gematria value of the Hebrew word chai, meaning life. Therefore 11 represents an excess of worldly life-sustaining goods. In other words, too much food. In keeping with the secret laws of God, Anna caved in and bought a box of donuts. When she saw the vans, she briefly hoped that her housemate Aaron, the alternately annoying and lovable amateur Kabbalist, who had a crush on her,
but whom she tolerated anyway, was still at Stanford picking up library books. That hope vanished when she saw the street plunged into darkness, heard the sound of gunshots. There was a part of her that wanted to run back and help. How? Wielding the bag of groceries as a weapon? And another part that wanted to at least run inside to destroy the computers before Unsong could get its hands on them. She knew some names. Maybe not as fluently as I did, but she knew them. But she also knew that only total idiots engaged in magical duels against an armed opponent. So instead she ran, her bag of milk and donuts bobbing beside her. I don't know why she didn't drop it, except that maybe when you're panicked, you don't think straight. 5 minutes running brought her to the Berryessa BART station. All sweaty and out of breath, she took out her card, ran it through the turnstile. A train arrived almost immediately. She got on, not even looking at where it was going. She had to get away, as far as possible, somewhere that would make Unsong's search area unmanageably large. And so, hour and a half later, she reached the end of the line and stepped off the BART at Pleasanton and started putting distance between herself and the station. After 10 minutes running through parking lots and subdivisions, she sat down in a field by the side of the road and let herself breathe again, let herself think. She started crying. Erica, her cousin, Aaron, her weird platonic friend whom she had married but only as a test. All her other housemates, what had happened to them? What disaster? Had Aaron screwed up? What had happened on his trip to Stanford? Had he told Dodd? Was it just a coincidence? Were they in trouble for hosting Unitarian meetings, for misusing protected names, or for trying to take over the world? Had anybody died? Those people in the black vans looked really serious. Aaron, she asked, mentally, but there was no answer. She couldn't go back to Ithaca. Unsong would be watching. She couldn't go to her parents in Redwood City. If Unsong had figured out the extent of what they discovered, they'd be watching her parents as well. There were various Unitarians up in the North Bay, but if they knew about Ithaca, then maybe they'd infiltrated the Unitarians. Her friends weren't safe. They might not really be her friends. She could turn herself in. But for what crime? What if they were just annoyed at some crazy thing Erica did, but she spilled the beans about the vital name and put Erica and Aaron in danger? And what if she could find some books on name error correction? She still had the garbled version of the vital name. She could still figure it out and achieve Aaron's plan without him. Once she controlled the world, she could politely ask Unsong to hand over her friends. There was something horrifying about the idea of giving up when the stakes were that high. So she could be a fugitive. She could run away until she found name error correction books or a trustworthy Kabbalist to help her. Then get another computer. Then try again. She took stock of her situation. In her wallet she had $105.42 and several credit cards, all traceable. Also a fake ID Erica had made for her once in an especially fuck the police mood, when she had decided that having fake IDs was virtuous and countercultural even if you never used them. Also, she realized for the first time that she was still carrying a bag of milk and donuts. She ate a couple of donuts. They were really good. She wandered in search of a library and found one gratifyingly quickly. The librarian told her that name error correction books were really technical and that she should go to a specialized library at Berkeley or Stanford. She figured that would be the case. She thanked the librarian and spent $74.99 to get a room at a nearby hotel, where she promptly collapsed on the bed. She was half asleep when she noticed that the laptop on the desk was Sarah, too. Anna looked it over very carefully. Had it been there when she came in? Had she dismissed it as just a complimentary laptop for guests to use? Maybe a little unusual in a cheap hotel like this, but not extraordinary? She couldn't remember. But it was here now, and it was Sarah. The same old Ni-1 series machine. The same pattern of scratches on the cover. It even had Aaron scrawled in black pen on the side. Anna looked out the window and saw nothing out of the ordinary. Feeling a little silly, she looked under the beds. No one there. Very carefully, a name on the tip of her tongue, she cracked open the door of her room and saw nobody. Either it had been here when she came in, or what? But that didn't make sense. She hadn't even known she was going to this hotel before she stumbled across it. Euphemism. The front desk had asked if she wanted a room on the first or second floor. She'd been the one who decided the second. How out of it had she been? Had she fallen asleep on the bed without realizing it? Had someone snuck in, deposited the laptop, and snuck out? Her hands shaking, expecting to be arrested at any moment, she opened the laptop. The familiar picture of Sarah Michelle Gellar stared back at her. Lull was gone. The browser was gone. All the desktop icons were gone except one. A text file called Read Me. Anna read, Aaron Smith Teller is being held at a secret Unsong detention facility a mile southwest of Ione, California. You should try to rescue him. Use the names below. Absolutely nothing will go wrong. Leave now, it is not safe here. And there followed 3 totally novel names and 3 explanations. The first was the spectral name, which granted invisibility. The second, the Air Walker name, which granted the power to tread on air as if it were solid ground. And the third, the Mistral name, which according to the document's somewhat ominous description, called the Winds. Anna Thurmond, the august and distinguished scholar in theodicy, and generally a pretty with-it person, was dumbfounded. So she started in the obvious place. She spoke the first name, and she became invisible. Euphemism, she said in shock, and as soon as the word left her mouth, she was visible again. Well, that upped the ante. There was no such thing as a name that turned you invisible. If there was, she was pretty sure the military would be using it, instead of marching entire visible battalions against the enemy like a sucker. Some said there were angels who knew secret names. Some said the Comet King had known every name that was or would ever be. Some even said that Unsong was sitting on a giant stockpile of names that it kept for its own exclusive use. And then there were always random Kabbalists who got lucky, like the time she discovered Scab Mom, but for somebody to be sitting on the secret of invisibility. Was it a trap? The obvious point in favor was that they were asking her to pretty much walk into an Unsong headquarters, unarmed with an incredibly valuable magical artifact. The obvious point against was that whoever was laying the trap already knew where she was and already had Sarah, making the charade a total waste of their time. Wait, Sarah, whoever did this must not know what Sarah was. Who, knowing the computer's power, would just give it away? But how would somebody know enough to place Aaron at Unsong, but not realize why he had been arrested? If he was even arrested for the vital name. But if it was just a standard sting on Unitarians, who would care enough to give her 3 new names and send her off to rescue him? And if they were so powerful, why didn't they just save him themselves? Ah! The more she thought about it, the less sense it all made. She minimized the README file, looked at the computer again. Nothing. Somebody had wiped the computer clean of everything except the Sarah Michelle Gellar wallpaper. Maybe transferred it to a different computer? Maybe this was a shell of Sarah, and the real Sarah was somewhere else. She briefly thought of how horrified Aaron would be to know that some hyper-competent secret conspiracy had his porn collection, and she laughed, even though this is not funny at all. Then she turned herself invisible again. It was weird, because she still had a perfect proprioceptive sense of exactly where her body was. She could almost see it as if it were there, but she was definitely invisible. Her clothes were also invisible. Huh, she said, and immediately became visible again. She put Sarah in her bag, put the bag around her shoulder, and tentatively spoke the name. Bag and contents became invisible. Wow, she said, and reappeared. Plato told the story of a man named Gyges, renowned everywhere for his virtue. One day, he found a magic ring that allowed him to turn invisible. After this, he just went around stealing everything in sight, because it turns out virtue doesn't mean that much when you have magic powers and know it's impossible to ever get caught. Anna had never been a big fan of the story. She thought that virtue was something innate, something you did because it was right and not out of fear of punishment. She thought Plato had sold Gyges short. On her way out of the hotel, she took $300 from the cash drawer right under the clerk's nose, plus a backpack for the donuts. In her and Geige's defense, she said to herself, the hotel was a giant evil corporation and had probably stolen the money from the pockets of the working man. She agonized for a second over whether or not to bring the computer. If she did and anything went wrong, Unsong would take Sarah, and that would be the end. If she didn't, she'd have to leave it here, where it apparently wasn't safe, and to come back here afterwards. She decided if she was captured, or if she couldn't rescue Aaron, none of it mattered much anyway, and she put the laptop in the backpack with the donuts. Then she went visible again, called a cab, and asked how much it would cost to get to Ione. But woe unto them that were with him at the Valley Gate and at the University of California at Berkeley. KingJamesProgramming.tumblr.com, June 20th, 1970. San Francisco LSD became illegal in California in 1966. 2 years before the real world got so hallucinatory that it became redundant. Certain elements missed both developments and continued to experiment sporadically with a substance that was becoming increasingly dangerous. It wasn't just law enforcement. Ever since the cracks had appeared in the sky, there were scattered reports of weird things happening on psychedelics. The reports from peyote users in Mexico almost strained credibility. Even those unpatriotic enough to doubt the Nixon administration's ever more strident warnings about drug abuse were starting to take notice. Not the merry pranksters, and not Ken Kesey. He lay on the floor of an unfurnished San Francisco apartment, watching the swirling colors gently distort the malleable plane of the ceiling. Beside him, his friend Paul occasionally glanced up from the book he was reading and fulfilled his promised role of trip-sitter. It was pretty boring. Ken had been lying pretty motionless ever since taking the LSD tab, saying little. Still, the formalities needed to be observed. The colors began to swirl a little brighter. The pulsing fractals started to expand, simultaneously growing out and gathering in. When he reached the end of the chapter, Paul gave another cursory glance back at Kesey. His friend was standing upright. No, not standing, hovering. He was hovering about a foot about the floor. His face was expressionless. His eyes had lost all features, all signs of pupil and iris, and were radiant silver. Paul screamed. "Do not be afraid," said Kesey, but it was not his voice. What's going... What are... Help!" "Do not be afraid," said Kesey, and it was definitely not his voice. "I'm the right hand of God. I bring you eternity. All the walls will fall around you." Paul tried to stand. He took a second to catch his breath. Kesey, the thing in Kesey's body, seemed content to let him. He just stood there, hovering. Who are you?" asked Paul. "Neil," said the thing in Kesey's body. "But what are you?" "Neil," said the thing in Kesey's body, somewhat more forcefully. Quivering from head to toe, Paul knelt. May 11th, 2017. San Jose. Sitting in bed with her computer on her lap, Erica Lowry watched the sunrise and writing the news. The overt meaning of news is new things. The Kabbalistic meaning of news is the record of how the world undoes human ambitions. This we derive by Notarikon interpreting news as an acronym for the 4 cardinal points, north, east, west, and south. There is a second Notarikon of the same form. In Greek, the 4 cardinal points are Arctos, north, Dices, west, Anatole, east, and Mesembria, south. When God took dust from the 4 corners of the world to make the first man, he named him after those 4 corners in Notarikon, thus Adam. Despite this similarity, the 2 words have a difference. News goes NEWS, and Adam, converted to the English equivalents, goes NWS. The middle 2 letters are reversed. Why? When I was explaining this to Anna, I added that there was a 3rd word in this class, that being snoo. When she asked what's snoo, I said, "Not much. What's snoo with you?" And she refused to speak to me for the rest of the day. I offer the following explanation for the variation. During the day, the sun goes from east to west. This sunrise then sunset cycle represents the natural course of the world, the movement from birth to death. Adam is the only one in history who reversed that pattern. He went from dead clay to living man. And his descendants continue upon that road, trying to reverse nature, to wrest a bubble of order out of the general decay. They raise children, build cities, unify empires, but nature always has the last word. Children grow old and die, cities fall, empires crumble, the works of man succumb to the natural cycle. The West-East movement reverses itself, and the East-West course of the sun and the world takes over. And when it does, we call it news. And so, Erica Lowry watched the sunrise and writing the news. Erica's Steven Sight Standard was one of the most popular magazines of the Bay Area countercultural scene. She had a gift. If I had to name it, I'd say it was a gift at taking things seriously. If someone organized a protest and only 5 people attended, and then it started raining, and so they all went inside and had lunch, Erica could make it sound slightly more heroic and monumental than the First Crusade. She didn't misreport the facts. She didn't gloss over things. She just wrote from the heart, and her heart was convinced that whatever she and anyone in her vicinity were doing was the most important thing. This morning, Erica was making the final decision about what stories to include in the June issue. The cover story would be about the recent trend towards a few big hedge funds buying out stakes in all the theonomics. Aaron had contributed a long, Kabbalistic analysis of the nursery rhyme, "There's a hole in my bucket," which was very Aaron, but would at least fill pages. Last but not least, a call to attend a vigil for the dead Coloradans to take place in Oakland Harbor, just short of the bridge that no one took. Everyone was going to stand by the water and hold candles. And this would be a fitting tribute to the martyrs in the battle against tyranny, and she was so caught up in her work she almost didn't notice the gunshots. It had suddenly become dark outside. Somebody had used the tenebrous name. It didn't matter. She didn't need to see the street below to know what was going on. Unsong had finally found them. She had known this day would come. Anna was out getting milk. She'd said Aaron had gone out to borrow a book from the library. She was all alone. Whistling, she reached under her bed and retrieved her emergency Unsong fleeing backpack, taking a couple of seconds to stuff her laptop into the front pocket. Erica was a good magazine editor because she lived in a slightly different world than everyone else, a world where enemies lurked behind every corner and anybody could be a hero. Very occasionally, her world intersected the real world, and then she was like a fish in water. She climbed out the window and jumped onto the emergency Unsong fleeing tree just outside. From there, she jumped down into the neighbor's yard, ran around to the back, jumped the back fence into a different neighbor's yard, then jumped out the front fence, and was on the street after her own. Making sure to look calm, she followed it until she came to the park, then cut across, and ended up on a different street entirely. She slipped into a cafe, ordered a coffee, and sat down. That had gone exactly the way it did in her fantasies. She took her emergency Unsong fleeing phone out of that backpack and texted first Anna, then Aaron. "Hey," she wrote, "Santa Barbara is lovely this time of year. Wish you were here." If Unsong had their phones, it would knock them off the trail. If either of them had their phones, well, judging by what had happened when she had laboriously explained this system to them earlier, they would roll their eyes and tell her that real life didn't work like that, and code words were stupid. But hopefully they would at least text her back and tell her if they were safe. When she didn't get an answer, she checked Amtrak.com on the laptop, grumbled, finished her coffee, and walked back out onto the street. She almost bumped into a police officer carrying a bag of bagels on her way out. She gave him a little smile, and he smiled back awkwardly. She kept walking, street after tree-lined street, until she came close enough to the airport that the roar of planes overhead became deafeningly unpleasant. At one end of an asphalt lot was a shabby apartment building. After taking a notebook out of her backpack to make sure she had the right place, she knocked on door 3A. A haloed head peeked out, that cracked the door a little wider to reveal an ungainly winged body. "If this is about letting God into my life," he said forlornly, "please don't bother me. I'm already an angel." "Prindil," she said. "It's me. Erica." Angels weren't very good at distinguishing human faces, but they never forgot a name. "Oh," the other answered. "Sorry. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Sorry. I promise I didn't mean—" "It's okay," Erica said. "May I come in?" Pirindil's single-room apartment was bare. Very bare. I guess if you didn't subsist off food, there wasn't much reason to have a table, a stove, or a refrigerator. But where did he sit? "I need you to help me get on the California Zephyr," she said. Pirindil looked confused. "Aren't you supposed to buy tickets?" he asked. "The tickets are sold out months in advance, silly," Erica told him. Pirindil was a fallen angel, not a demon, mind you. The difference between a demon and a fallen angel is the difference between a submarine captain and a sailor who's pushed off the deck of a ship without a life jacket. The demon knows precisely what he's doing and enjoys every minute of it. The fallen angel, well, G.K. Chesterton said that angels fly because they take themselves lightly. But what happens when an angel sees too much, gets too weighed down by the sins and suffering of the world? The clouds stop supporting his weight, the wings that bore him aloft in the days of Abraham and Moses grow weaker, and he plummets earthward, There, he gets stuck in a vicious cycle. No matter how cynical and jaded an angel becomes, it's never enough. Angelic brains, or souls, or whatever they have, just aren't built to hold the proper amount of cynicism for dealing with earthly existence. They end up hopelessly confused and constantly disappointed by everything around them, with almost no ability to adjust. There, they will never take themselves lightly again. I still think if you want to get on a train, you're supposed to buy a ticket, said Pirindiel, though he sounded uncertain. Nonsense, said Erica. Imagine if that were true. Only rich people would be able to go on trains. Poor people couldn't afford it at all. Oh, said Pirindiel, a little embarrassed. I guess I didn't think of that. It's all right, said Erica. You're new to this kind of thing. Now here's what I need you to do. It had taken a Kabbalistic rearrangement of the Midwest's spatial coordinate system that rendered roads there useless, plus a collapse of technology so profound that airplanes were only able to fly if Uriel was having a really good day, plus the transformation of the Panama Canal into some sort of conduit for mystical energies that drove anyone in its vicinity mad. But America had finally gotten its act together and created a decent rail system. As usual, it was the Comet King who had made it happen, meeting with President Bush and Governor Deukmejian back in the late 80s, and agreeing to upgrade one of the old Amtrak routes into a true high-speed railroad like the ones they'd had for decades in Asia. It started in San Francisco, crossed Nevada and Utah, continued on to Denver, a hop and a skip from the Comet King's capital in Colorado Springs, cut straight through this Midwest, and ended up on the Atlantic coast. That worked for about 5 years. Then there had been another sudden drop in the efficiency of technology, and parts of the route needed costly refitting to use the motive name. Then the Comet King had died and the security situation went to hell, in some cases literally. The smoking ruins of the Midwest had been taken over by warlords and barbarian chiefdoms. Paulus the Lawless, the Witch King of Wichita, the Oklahoma Ochlocracy who wanted tolls to pass their territory. The other king seized Nevada and demanded another toll plus the promise that the train wouldn't be used to lift the siege of the West Children in Colorado. The smoldering conflict that had troubled the East Coast after the election of 2000 had devolved into guerrilla warfare that made the whole Appalachian area dangerous. Now the Zephyr was down to one trip a week, out of California on a Thursday afternoon, into D.C. Friday morning, then back in California by Saturday night. The tickets were expensive and sold out months in advance. The Zephyr, said Erica, is going to leave the station in about 2 hours. The train is guarded at the station to make sure nobody climbs into the storage cars. But after it starts moving, there's no problem. I just need you to fly me onto the train as it leaves the station. I can take it from there. Pirindiel looked miserable. I want to help, he said, but I'm not very good at flying anymore. All you'd have to do is carry me a couple of meters from the side of the track onto the train, she said, and I know that might be hard for you. But that's why I have this. She took a vial of a clear liquid out of her backpack. Angels fly because they take themselves lightly. Fallen angels are weighed down by the sins and sorrows of the world. But ever since ancient Mesopotamia, people have known an easy way to temporarily forget the sins and sorrows of the world. A couple of pints of beer will help the most jaded of men take themselves lightly again. Beer doesn't work on angels, but holy water has much the same effect. Pirindiel stared at it greedily. I don't think I'm supposed to do that, he said. He was right. Churches had very strict policies on giving holy water to angels or to people who looked like they were going to sell it to angels. Erica had only gotten a vial by seducing a seminary student and promising not to do exactly what she was doing right now. It's for a good cause, Erica explained patiently. It's to help you fly me onto the train. I need to go on this train, you know. It's very important. It's for true love. My boyfriend is in D.C. Really? Asked Pirindiel. Sort of really. Erica's sometime boyfriend, Brian Young, had left Ithaca 3 months ago out of annoyance at what he considered to be the excessive pacifism and hippiness of the California counterculture. He'd vowed to find Boojum, the terrorist cell that had already killed one president and was supposedly gunning for more. And the East Coast had been his first stop. A few weeks ago, he'd sent Erica a phone number. She hadn't called it, because God only knew what sort of trouble Brian had gotten himself mixed up in, and she didn't know who might or might not be listening to phone calls. But if Unsong was really looking for her, she had better get as far away as she could. And if Brian had really fallen in with Boojum, they probably knew a thing or two about avoiding manhunts. As for the fugitive thing, there was no way she was mentioning that to Perindial.
Sure, once she had given him her spiel, he'd come around to being an occasional member of their Unitarian cell. But angels just weren't good at defying authority. If he knew she was a fugitive, there was every chance he might have a sudden crisis of conscience and turn her in. Well, said Perindial, if it's about true love...
And then he drank the entire flagon of holy water in one gulp. There were ways of dealing with conscience. 3 hours later, Erica climbed down a hatch into a luggage car and gave a long sigh. She was, she reflected, pretty darn safe. Unsong could search the entire West Coast for her. Maybe they would, and they'd find nothing. And if Perindial told on her, and sure, he might, well, a lot of good that would do them. She'd told the angel she was going to Washington, but Brian's area code said New York. She'd get off the train in Manhattan and let them search D.C. to their heart's content. The train passed through the Central Valley, then climbed into the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. It was all the same to Erica. The luggage car didn't have any windows. She checked her cell phone one last time before the battery went dead. Nothing from Aaron, nothing from Anna. She hoped they would be okay. She figured they would be. They both had good heads on their shoulders. Well, sort of. Okay, not really. But they were book smart. That had to be worth something, right? She rested her head against a bag of luggage and fell asleep. October 10th, 1990, Gulf of Mexico 1. Good morning, said Sohu as she stepped out of her cottage. Technically, it was already afternoon. She hadn't slept late, but she'd stayed inside, studying, dreading to open the door. Uriel had no concept of small talk, and precious little concept of scheduling. She knew the moment she walked outside he would start expounding Kabbalah at her, talking faster than she could follow and demanding impossible feats of scholarship. It wasn't that she dreaded it, exactly. Just that she wanted to be able to steel herself a little before facing it. As for the Archangel, he never seemed to notice or care about the time. She suspected she could have just stayed inside all week and spared herself any lessons at all if she had been so inclined. But then, why live with an archangel in a hurricane? He had heard the greeting. She took a deep breath, readied herself for what was to come. Knock, knock, said Uriel. What? Said Sohu. Last week I said your homework assignment was to learn every language, said Uriel. Did you... Wait, said Sohu. What was with the knock-knock? You have seemed somewhat lost recently. I borrowed a human book on education. It says that in order to keep children engaged, you should tell jokes throughout your lesson. And someone told you that was how jokes work? No, but I was able to figure it out myself after reading several examples. Sohu mentally assessed whether this was better or worse than the normal way Uriel did things, came up blank. No, you have to hear it. Let me show you. Knock, knock. Now you say who's there. It's a joke. It is not very funny. That's not the joke. When I say knock, knock, you say who's there. Knock, knock. Who's there? This is still not very funny. Slow down. I say knock, knock. You say who's there. I say a name. You say that same name. And then you add who. And then I make a joke. I think it would be more efficient if you started by making the joke. It wouldn't work that way. Knock, knock. Who's there? Avery. Avery who? Avery silly knock, knock joke. Avery silly knock, knock joke who? You only say who one time. Okay. You didn't seem to find that very funny. Which part was the joke again? I said Avery, like it was my name. But actually, I was using it as part of the phrase, a very silly knock-knock joke. Why? It's like what you were saying about Kabbalistic correspondences. Two different things that have the same structure. The name Avery and the words of very, and you don't see it at first, but then later you do. Uriel stood quietly, glowing letters swirling all around him. He seemed to be thinking deeply, as if this were a far harder problem than merely stabilizing the El Niño cycle, his project for yesterday, or defragmenting mammalian DNA, the day before. So a joke is like a surprising Kabbalistic correspondence. Sort of. Knock knock. Who's there? Nachash is the Hebrew word for serpent, but it has a gematria value of 358, which is the same as the Hebrew word Moshiach, meaning Messiah. Thus, although the serpent introduces sin into the world, and the Messiah redeems the world from sin, both are Kabbalistically identical. You are not laughing. Sohu's expression was somewhere between horror and pity. That was not funny? Probably not in the way you intended it to be. Oh, I think you might not be very good at jokes. I think it is very surprising that the most dire threat to the world is prophesied also to be its Redeemer, taken together with Isaiah 53:12, stating that the Messiah will be numbered among the great transgressors. It presents a very unusual view of sin and redemption. It has to be a special type of surprising. Why don't we get back to the lesson? Okay. Last week, I said your homework assignment was to learn every language. Did you complete it? I told you, humans can't do things like that. Oh, right. Then I told you to do something humans were good at, like start a war. Did you complete that one? I thought you were joking. No, you can learn a lot of things from starting a war. 50 years ago, some people started a war, and they ended up learning the secrets of the atom. It was very impressive. I'm not starting a war. Okay? Sohu tried to read his face. Was she disappointing him? Today, we will learn about the two pillars on the tree of life. The right pillar consists of Chokmah, Chesed, and Netzach. It represents the right hand of God and is associated with mercy. The left pillar consists of Bina,
Givora, and Hud. It represents the left hand of God and is associated with justice. My book on education says I should stop to see if you have any questions. Do you have any questions? She didn't want to disappoint him further. She tried to think of a question. You talk about these correspondences all the time, so how does this correspond to human politics? We also talk about a right side and a left side. But in human politics, the right is usually more concerned with justice, and the left is usually more concerned with mercy. How come in Kabbalah it's the opposite of that? That is an excellent question. Your homework for next week is to figure out the answer. Oh, so it was going to be one of those types of lessons. Sohu scowled. It is a common misconception that the right hand is good and the left evil. As aspects of the deity, both are good and necessary to produce balance. The right hand creates and sustains, the left hand directs and purifies. But after the shattering of the vessels, when all aspects lost their connection to supernal divinity, the right hand became aimless in its blessings, and the left switched from the careful direction of a loving father to punishment for its own sake. The middle pillar represents the compromise between these two extremes.
Balance. Union. Hide. Another question. What do you mean by hide? Uriel pointed at the edge of the hurricane, and Sohu's little cloud shot in that direction so quickly she fell over onto its puffy surface. Her own cloud rotated 90 degrees and smashed up against the wall of the storm so that she was sandwiched between them as they merged. Trapped. She clawed frantically, trying to break free, until she was rewarded with a view of clear sky, the 400-foot vertical drop to the ocean below, and a tiny figure suspended in the air at the level of Uriel's face. 2. Uriel was talking to someone. She could barely see him at this distance. Human-sized, she thought. His voice carried cool and emotionless, solid like ice. Would you like to get this over with and kill me now? He asked. Or do we have to do it the hard way? The hard way, said Uriel. Then they both took a step skew to any of the dimensions her normal eyes could see. She felt new senses opening up as she tried to follow their path, senses that inferred their presence from the paths of the colored letters that swirled around the storm. The hurricane abstracted, became a series of perturbations in the seed of the world. She traced them back, Sa'ar, then along another set of threads, Tempestus, still another, Hurricane. The stranger seized the threads, pulled them forward, sheared them to their essence, HRCN. Then he rearranged them, made them dance, Kren, then fleshed them out. Acheron, the river that formed the boundary of hell. Sohu felt the storm darken, become deathly hot. Somehow the transmutation was affecting reality. Uriel reached out, his flaming sword now in his hand, and parted the threads. CHRN. He fleshed them out, turned the first set into Chai, meaning life. The second into Aaron, brother of Moses, progenitor of the priesthood who bore the Shem HaMepharash upon his forehead. The darkness broke. Waves of holy light rushed forth from where Uriel had made the change. The stranger snarled, hurt. Go away, Thamiel, said the archangel. Sohu froze. Thamiel, the lord of demons, was here, was fighting Uriel. Thamiel touched both sets of threads. Aaron shifted vowels, became ruin. From the whistling of the wind, he drew an S, added it to Chai, shifted it into chaos. Chaos and ruin. The carefully arranged threads of symbols that made up Uriel's machine began crumbling, falling apart in the wind. Uriel drew water from the sea in a great waterspout. The Semitic pictograph for water was the origin of the Hebrew letter mem. He turned the water into an M, then grabbed the CH from chaos and the N from ruin, made machine. The remaining letters, R and S, he stuck together, slashed at the S until it hardened and became a Z. RZ, Araz, secrets. Through the angel Raziel, the secrets of Kabbalah in particular, a machine of Kabbalistic secrets. His machinery stopped crumbling, starting putting itself together, glowing with renewed light. Themiel grabbed the Z, held it in the plume of water until it softened back into an S, then used it to make Rasha, wicked, and Nakam, punishment. The punishment of the wicked, the devil's task. Thamiel began to grow bigger as the power of the storm drained into his essence. Then he paused, pointed at the letters. Of their own accord, 2 dropped away, made a new pattern. Miria, friend. You have a friend here, he told Uriel. No, said Uriel. The letters don't lie, said Thamiel. He pointed to them again. Another 2 dropped out. Sohu. Interesting, said Thamiel. They were the scariest 4 syllables Sohu had ever heard. The 2 stepped back into the regular world at the same time, and Thamiel flew right towards her. She could see him clearly now. He looked like a man. He was dressed in a very black suit. His face evoked a military officer, or a high-level executive, or a serial killer, or a cop who always had rumors of brutality swirling around him, but nobody could ever pin anything down. Not the kind of impulsive brutality of the guy who loses his cool every so often, but a very calculated brutality. The cop who knows way too much about how to hurt people without leaving marks, and who has no crime at all in his precinct, and nobody wants to ask why. Gaunt, empty gray eyes, close-cropped hair. To the right of his head was a second head. It looked like a deformed infant. Its eyes were firmly shut, and its mouth was locked into a perpetual silent scream. So, he said with his normal head. The other one was still screaming. I'm Thamiel. We meet at last. He had 2 bat wings on his back, no bigger than they would have been on a bat. On him they looked ridiculous, vestigial. They held him aloft nonetheless. In his hand was a bident, like a trident, but with 2 points instead of 3. He looked straight at her, held out the bident, and the clouds hiding her melted away. Do not hurt her, said Uriel. Ah, said Thamiel. Perhaps now you're more interested in killing me. Uriel said nothing. Thamiel stared at the girl, Sohu didn't say anything. Your father's sign is on you. He pointed to her left hand. To her eyes there was nothing there. It just looked like skin. If I harm you, it calls him here. She had known nothing of this. Still it made sense. But, said the demon, it thinks of harm in very literal terms. I don't. Very, very gingerly, he touched the 2 points of the bident to Sohu's forehead. She remembered a poem. If in some smothering dreams you 2 could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin. If you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cut of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. She remembered it because it was the only thing that could describe how it felt. All the light vanished from the world, everything stable, everything comprehensible. Like a vertiginous nausea of the mind, like every fiber of her being was united in an urge to vomit that would never be satiated. Not like she had cancer, like she was cancer, like there was nothing pure or orderly left within her, like she needed to be excised from the universe, like the universe needed to be excised from the cosmos, or like the whole cosmos needed to be killed with poison to put it out of its own misery. But that doing so wouldn't help. Couldn't help. There was no poison outside, and separate from the cancer, everything was going to be horrible forever, and it was all her fault. Uriel, she shouted with her last ounce of strength. Kill me! Thamiel opened one eye a little wider on his first face. The eyes of the second were still glued shut. I was going for kill him, said the devil, but your way works too, actually. The second head continued to scream. Uriel stood silently as the colors and symbols whirled around him, no emotion on his face. You should know, said Thamiel to her quietly, that if one were to compare a single water droplet of this cloud to all the oceans of the world, the oceans above that are seen by man, and the greater oceans below in the wellsprings of the earth. That as minuscule are the torments you suffer now to the torments of hell that are prepared for you and everyone you love. And that even if you escape those torments, as some do, you have friends and you have a family, and even those who seem most virtuous have secret sins. And so the probability that neither you nor any of those you care about end up in my dominions is impossibly fleeting. A ghost of a chance. And that I will be given dominion over the earth, and that it will be no different. And everything beautiful and lovely and innocent will become no different from what you feel now. Only it will last forever. And that I don't care at all about you, but I wanted to see whether Uriel did. And that he could stop this at any time. And you're probably blind by this point, but you should know that he's standing there, watching all of this. And he knows exactly what's going on, and he hasn't even changed his expression. And I could do this for an hour, a year, an eternity, and he would still be standing there. The second head just kept screaming. "Still," said Thamiel. "I'm busy, and duty calls." He lifted the bident from Sohu's forehead, and she collapsed onto the cloud. "I'm changing my mind," he told the Archangel. "You don't need to kill me today. I think it will be more interesting watching you explain yourself to Sohu. We can do the usual death return thing the next time." "Go away, Thamiel," said Uriel. "Of course," said the devil, and he dove into the sea and disappeared. 3. Sohu lay there for a moment. Let the light and fresh air slowly leak back into her sensorium. The horror seemed oddly distant now, like she could barely remember it. A nightmare retreating after break of day. But the word she could not forget. A rush of air, as Uriel summoned her cloud back beside him at the center of the storm. A bulge in the center gradually took shape and developed, bud-like, into her cottage. The flying kayak was still there, somehow, tethered to the edge of the cloud just as it had been before. "Are you okay?" She struggled to speak. Finally, she just said, "What happened?" "Thamiel does not like me. He wanted me to do something bad to save you. I did not. I am sorry." Sohu turned herself over so that she was supine on the cloud. She saw the angel's head leaning over her, filling the sky, his eyes as bright as the sun, and she covered her own eyes to avoid being blinded. She thought for a second. So many things she wanted to say. She formed the responses, compared them, mulled them over in her mind. "I trust you to do the right thing. You do. Uriel, it was really bad. You have no idea how scary that was. Please don't let him hurt me again. Please don't let me die. I will try to keep you safe. I don't want to be kept safe. I want to... You fought him, Uriel. Not very well, but you did. I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to fight. I will teach you many things, but your homework for tonight is to rest and feel better." He stopped himself. Or is that one of the things humans cannot do? I'm not sure, but I think I can try. "'Cause the law worketh wrath. For where no law is, there is power, and who may stand in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is applied." These two rules describe the essence of a computer programmer trainee. King James, programming.tumblr.com, May 11th, 2017, Ione, California. Something was horribly wrong. Gradually, it came back to me. I'd tried to fight Unsong, and failed miserably. They'd seized me, and presumably my computer too, driven goodness knows how many hours with me in the back of a black van, then deposited me in a cell somewhere. I had fallen asleep. Now I had woken up. I was still in an Unsong cell. There were guards outside the window. This was not what was horribly wrong. The wrongness was subtler than that. It pierced to the bone. It was like hearing your own heartbeat pounding in your ears, except that it was off, in some way that you couldn't explain, and you kept thinking maybe you had some rare heart disease that was going to kill you any moment now. I tried to get up and was mildly surprised when I succeeded. Whatever was wrong wasn't physically wrong. I tried to speak and found that I was gagged. Obvious precaution. You capture a Kabbalist. You don't want them speaking. No chance Unsong was going to forget that. The cell was spacious, although to be fair, my standards had been set by the sort of rooms I could rent for minimum wage in the Bay Area. It was well kept, as if advertising that Unsong didn't need to deny its prisoners any of their physical needs in order to break them. Or maybe I was reading too much into it, because everything around me still felt horribly wrong. I cleared my mind as best I could. "Anna, are you there? Where are you?" There was nothing. Either Anna was far away or distracted or asleep, or I couldn't make myself think dead. I would have felt it if she died. That, I told myself, is definitely how Kabbalistic marriages work. So I banged on the door of my cell, hoping that the guards would hear me and take me away to whatever awful fate was awaiting me, rather than leave me here where something was horribly wrong. Both guards looked at me. One of them muttered something I couldn't hear, probably along the lines of, "He's awake." I was surprised to see they looked like ordinary people. The one on the left wore a sort of serious expression that reminded me of Elliot Foss, for some reason. The one on the right looked a combination of pissed off and scared. I wondered if he, too, could feel that something was horribly wrong. "Mr. Smith-Teller," he said. I winced internally. I mean, I suppose if they didn't know my name now, it wouldn't have taken them too much longer to find it out, but it still hurt. Kabbalists are notoriously fussy about who knows their true name. I'm not sure why. When an angel or demon is hidden in some sort of incarnate form, knowing their true name gives you power over them. Knowing the Shem HaMepharash does the same to God or something. I don't think there's anything like this for humans. But there's still just something that feels very careless about letting your enemies have such an important word. "You're awake just in time. We'll be taking you for debriefing now. Please come peacefully, or we will have to take measures to enforce compliance." He didn't say it in a nasty way, though. I kind of liked the guy. But something was nevertheless horribly wrong. I nodded and let them open the door of my cell and march me down the corridor. This was something else. I knew Unsong arrested people. I knew that they put you in prison for a long time if you used names without a license. But I'd always heard they used the normal federal prisons. The idea of a secret Unsong black site somewhere sounded like it was out of Erica's paranoid anti-government screeds. It didn't fail to register that if no one had ever revealed the existence of this place before, that meant either that they were very good with the amnestic name, or else no one had ever gotten out of here before. I tried to remember exactly how effective the amnestic name was, and ironically came up blank. And what about the confounding name? I couldn't remember. The facility wasn't small either. We walked through poorly lit corridor after poorly lit corridor. I tried to look for other prisoners, references to the location, even doors with signs on them. But all I spotted were a couple of locked rooms with the Unsong seal on the front, an Aleph superimposed on the United Nations globe, and around it, the name United Nations Subcommittee on Names of God, and the motto, Aitego Arcana Dei. Begone, I hide the secrets of God. There were deep Kabbalistic depths in that phrase. But I didn't have the energy to think about them, because something was horribly wrong. We came to a room, a conference room it looked like. They motioned me to sit down. The sense that something was horribly wrong got stronger. The guards could feel it too. I could tell. The door swung open. "Ma'am," said one of the guards, politely, yet as quickly as possible, and then both of them walked away just slowly enough not to technically be considered running. 2 other guards entered, both looking like people who were in severe pain, but had been dealing with it for long enough that they could sort of crack a nervous smile and say it didn't bother them anymore. And between them, a 5-foot-tall woman of ambiguous ethnicity wearing a purple dress and a pearl necklace, and I thought, I've seen this person in the newspaper. "Mr. Smith-Teller," she said and smiled at me. "I'm Malia Ngo." Okay, so any hope that they were just annoyed at Erica's secret meetings was gone. This was Director General Malia Ngo, the head of Unsong. If she was involved, they thought this was the most important thing happening in the world at this moment. Which, of course, it was. They knew all about the vital name and everything it could do, and they were going straight to the top. Okay, so I was really doomed when the president and the Comet King had worked together to convince the United Nations to fund Unsong. Leadership of the fledgling bureaucracy had gone to an elderly Brazilian politician who had taken a hands-off approach. He'd gone after the biggest gangs and most blatant serial abusers of names. talking about decapitation strikes against networks of large-scale pirates. The policy was very popular. Everyone agreed that having the mafia in on the name business was a bad idea, and pretty ineffective, because most unauthorized name use was by ordinary non-mafia people who talked to each other online. He died about 10 years ago, and been replaced by Miss No, who had joined the organization 2 years earlier and presided over a famous sting on the medicinal name gangs in the harmonious Jade Dragon Empire. She replaced her predecessor's cautious balance with a scorched earth approach that won her dozens of powerful enemies, all of whom were carefully outmaneuvered. It didn't hurt that theonomic profits increased about 300% during the first 5 years of her tenure. Sure, a lot of people thought that was because of blockbuster discoveries like the Precious Name and Zal and Quadrat boxing, but pirated names becoming 100 times harder to find couldn't have hurt either. Soon any move against her would have half the theonomics bigwigs in the country at the president's doorstep within an hour, and Unsong was her private fiefdom. She scared a lot of people, and I'd always thought it was a deliberate attempt to play the bully in order to compensate for her unthreatening appearance. Now she seemed just the opposite. She wasn't trying to look scary. She was doing everything she could not to. And it wasn't enough. "Mr. Smith-Teller," she repeated, "I'm sorry you're in this situation." She really did sound sorry. "I understand you are associated with several Unitarian groups who have a dim view of Unsong, and you're probably laboring under the misapprehension that I am here to hurt you. As difficult as this may be to believe, we're potentially on the same side. I'm going to take your gag out. If you start speaking a name, I'm afraid we'll have you unconscious before you finish the second syllable, and the gag will go back in. I'm sure you can imagine the reasons we have these precautions. Nod if you understand." Even her face was something terrible. I couldn't place her ethnicity at all. Her face looked like it came from one of those weird nightjar birds whose eyes are in the wrong place and don't even look like real eyes. I nodded. She made a motion to the guards. One of them took my gag out. "Mr. Smith-Teller," she said, "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but as you can tell from my presence here, we do have to take this very seriously, and I have to ask you a few questions. The Keller-Stern Act of 1988 states that anyone who discovers a divine name of potential military value is legally obligated to turn it over to the untied state's government in exchange for fair monetary compensation. Most people aren't aware of the act, and we have no interest in punishing them for refusing to follow a law they never heard of. But now you know. So, Mr. Teller-Smith, and please tell me the truth, do you know any names that might be covered under the law?" I felt like she would know if I lied. Her nightjar eyes stared into my soul. If I lied to Malia Ngo, something terrible would happen to me. "No," I said. "I don't know any such name." And it was God's own truth. Because I had forgotten the name. Because I was a moron. I could have told her more, but she terrified me, and the truth, that I'd known the vital name and forgotten it, would be neither believable nor welcome. And part of me was desperately hoping that if I said nothing, she would go away. The wrongness would end, and I would just be in a perfectly normal government black site, and everything would be fine. "Did you speak a name that allowed you to find the location of the moon?" "I did," I said. "How did you learn that name?" Every fiber of my body tensed at her oppressive closeness. It was a fair question. I had no way out this time. Either tell her what had happened, or lie like a rug and see exactly what those nightjar eyes could do. I ran through a host of scenarios. I tell the Director General that I knew the name and forgot it. She doesn't believe me and tries to torture it out of me. She doesn't believe me and tries to torture the name out of Anna. She does believe me and tries to dissect my brain to get it. She goes to an error correction specialist, fixes the name, and takes over the world, and I'm still alive to see it. I am definitely not a hero. I've been in one fight, but only because I was drunk and I ended up with 2 black eyes. The only thing I've ever been good at is studying things and comparing them and trying to understand them. But the sages of old weren't your typical heroes either, and they were constantly breaking out of prison by one miracle or another. Rabbi Meir convinced a Roman prison guard to free his friend by reassuring him that if anyone tried to punish his disobedience, he could say, "God of Meir, help me," and God would keep him from harm. When his commander tried to hang him for his role in the escape, the guard cried, "God of Meir, help me." The rope broke, and he managed to run away to safety. When a whole Roman legion arrived to arrest the great translator Onkelos, he preached to them in Latin about the symbolism of the mezuzah, and the whole legion converted to Judaism on the spot. And when the Romans arrested Rabbi Eleazar ben Parata on 5 charges, God helped him craft a plausible alibi for each. When the plausible alibis didn't work, the prophet Elijah appeared at the end of the trial, lifted up the prosecutor, and threw him out of the courtroom so hard that he landed 500 miles away. I think I mentioned that the Talmud is kind of crazy. So miraculously breaking out of prison is the sort of thing Kabbalists are expected to be able to do, and I daydream a lot. And a long time ago I had come up with a fantasy about the sort of thing I would do if I were ever trapped in a prison, and this was by far the stupidest thing I had ever done. But something was terribly wrong, and I needed to get out of here. I had a prophetic dream, I said. I knew the moment I said it that Malayango didn't believe me. I could see it in those nightjar eyes, and so I panicked. I gave up an advantage, threw out a morsel I was sure Ngo wanted. The dream told me how to use a computer program to discover new names. There. If I was right and she'd researched the moon-finding name specifically to catch people using lull, I just told her something she already knew was true. Redeemed myself. Maybe she still thought I was lying, but at least she knew it was an interesting lie. One that paralleled the truth. Maybe she'd want to hear me out. Tell me more, Ngo ordered. I made as if to object. It was a really, really strange dream, I said, full of bizarre imagery. It was only this weird sixth sense that helped me understand any of it at all. If I told you, it would just sound like random noise. And I couldn't believe I was actually doing this, but caught between the horror of lying to Ngo and the horror of telling her the truth, somehow I was going along with it, even though I knew very shortly this would be something to add to my I am an idiot file, right next to speaking the moon-finding name aloud. Tell me the dream, Ngo repeated. I looked awkward and abashed, and it had nothing to do with acting. It was all these weird images in succession. This is going to sound so stupid. I don't even know why I remember them so clearly. Ngo didn't even say anything, just stared at me with those eyes, as if to tell me I wasn't getting off the hook. It all started with a dog having sex with a tree. Ngo blinked, but said nothing. And Zeus saw this, and he made a river to drown the dog as punishment. And Shamu, you know, the killer whale, swam down the river, nibbling on somebody's skull. Ngo was still listening. She looked confused, but not suspicious. It was the skull of a vampire who had died reciting a poem about a lantern, I told the Director General. I know as much about Klippot as any man alive. I was the one who broke Nehemoth. I was the one who taught the singers cryptographers half the things they knew. I could see possibilities that everyone else would have thought insane. I was going to do this. I was making it happen. Sauron had knighted him once by speaking a secret name, I said, but it didn't save him. It was the dog who killed him, by lancing him through the heart with a thumbtack. For something to be a klipa, 4 things are necessary. That the speaker know the name he is trying to conceal. That there be a one-to-one correspondence between the klipa being uttered and the letters of the name being concealed, one which the speaker understands at the deepest level. That the correspondence not be ad hoc. You can't turn hello how are you into the tetragrammaton by declaring on the spot that hello equals yud, how equals hey, and so on. There has to be at least an intention or possibility of consistency, rather than a deliberate mapping on to a pre-existing pattern. And that the signal be separated from the noise, that the parts which represent letters are fixed in advance, and not separated by other parts representing other letters. I had invented my mnemonic system to help remember names through weird stories. It was hard to remember that the first 3 letters in the vanishing name were Dalet Samech Tav. But it was easy to remember a dog having sex with a tree. Given an appreciation of my mnemonic system, a story about a dog having sex with a tree and Zeus making a river was equivalent on a phonetic level to Dalet, Samek, Taf, Zayin, Mem, Resh, the first 6 letters of the vanishing name. Neptune went to inspect the river in his capacity as god of water and got mad and started terrorizing it with a rake. Kim Jong-un flew overhead in a lantern. Ngo was starting to look very dubious now. I didn't have much time. Moses recited a poem about tacos. Aaron came a voice from deep in my head. I've come to save you. Are you there? Anna? A horror. Anna Thurman was in this place. Anna, I can take care of myself. Maybe. Anna, get out. But to Maliang-o, I said only Neptune. Desat, Zamrush, Shan Several, as Kiondalathan Tri Kofuli Martan. Don't use the vanishing name, I had said during choir practice, unless you are in a situation where it is absolutely vital to your well-being and continued survival that you be accosted by a different band of hooligans than the ones who are currently accosting you. Right now, being accosted by a different band of hooligans was my heart's fondest and most desperate desire. As Director General Maliang-o and 2 Unsong guards strained to understand my made-up dream imagery, I completed the name and vanished from right in front of their faces. You saved your shillings and your last 6 pence, because in God's name they built a barbed wire fence. Be glad you sail for a better day, but don't forget there'll be hell to pay. Rebels are we, though heavy our hearts shall always be. Ah, no ball or chain, no prison shall keep, we're the rebels of the Sacred Heart. Rebels of the Sacred Heart, May 11th, 2017. Ione, California. We Bay Aryans. Anna and I had debated multiple demonyms, including Bay Aryan and Bay Aryan, before deciding we were more heretical than warlike, and definitely not the master race. Tended to think of the Central Valley as a nightmarish stretch of endless farms inhabited by people who, while not exactly dead, could hardly be called living. So far, nothing Anna had seen in the 2-hour taxi ride to Ione had changed her mind. Now here was the town itself, in all its glory. There wasn't anything that looked like a secret detention facility, although she supposed that was what made it a secret detention facility. But it was already dark, and she didn't fancy looking. She also didn't fancy waiting until morning. She wasn't really an expert in infiltrating secret facilities, but night seemed like potentially the best time, even if you could turn invisible. What was the saying? If Muhammad cannot go to the mountain must come to Muhammad? No, not that one. The other one. In America, you can always find a party. In Soviet Russia, party can always find you. Anna spoke the bulletproof name. It was a calculated choice. New enough that the theonomics were still guarding it closely, but old enough that it had leaked to a few singer groups and the Unsong sentinels were listening for it, chosen to lure the dragon from its den. Then she spoke the spectral name and became invisible. Sure enough, a white van showed up at the gas station where the cab had dropped her off, and some men in black uniforms got out and started looking around. The process of infiltrating them was harder than Anna expected. She couldn't just open the door of the van and walk in. There was still someone inside, and he might notice the doors opening of their own accord. And if the van was full, she was worried someone would try to sit in her lap on the way back to headquarters. And starting any other names would break her invisibility, so... She watched in disgust as the men, having finished their search of the premises, got back in their van and drove off. This was harder than it was in stories. So she rematerialized, spent some of her remaining money on some chocolate-frosted donuts from the gas station, and decided to think of a better plan. In America, Muhammad goes to mountain. In Soviet Russia, mountain comes to you, or whatever. She walked vaguely southward. When she felt like it was vaguely southward enough, she spoke the ascending name, then the spectral name again. Sure enough, back came her friends in the white van. More fruitless ground combing. Back in the van again. But this time she was higher than the hills and could see for miles. A little south of town, the van turned west onto a little country road. Went down a couple of miles, and then drove right into a hillside. Bingo. Anna Thurman started walking on air. By the time she reached the hillside, it was into the wee hours of the morning, and she was tired, and she wished she'd eaten more donuts when she had the chance. Such the regrets of a heroine. She wondered if the Comet King ever rode into battle wishing he'd eaten more donuts beforehand. An armored car drove up. The entryway opened to accept it. Anna Thurman slipped in unseen, and something was terribly wrong. It was heavy and oppressive, like a heartbeat slightly out of rhythm, but also not like that at all. She couldn't tell if it was auditory, or tactile, or olfactory. It was just this sense like there was a black hole just out of view, sucking in everything good about the universe. For lack of any better form of navigation, she followed the wrongness. "Aaron," she thought as she wandered through the corridor, "I've come to save you. Are you there?" "Anna, I thought back at her. Anna, I can take care of myself. Maybe. Anna, get out! And then she felt my mental trace suddenly vanish from her mind. A door marked with the Unsong seal swung open, and a very short woman in a purple dress and pearl necklace stepped out with a very grim look on her face. Holy euphemism, thought Anna. That's Director General Malia Ngo. Malia looked her Anna straight in the eye and asked, Who are you and why are you invisible? Something was horribly wrong, and Malia Ngo was that something. Anna ran. Lock down everything, the Director General shouted. This would have been a good time for Anna to use the vanishing name, except that starting it would break whatever was left of her invisibility, and whatever advantage she had came from nobody but Ngo being able to see her. So she just ran. Several officers, soldiers, let's stick with goons, congregated around the director, only to uncongregate and fan out, confused. Ngo grabbed a gun from one of them and shot at Anna. The woman missed by a mile, and the unexpected recoil knocked her to her feet. No soldier, she. A guard sat by the entryway, clearly doing his best to watch out for invisible people sneaking towards him. Anna punched him in the face, then hit the lever his presence was lampshading. The exit door swung open, and she ran forth into the night. Malia followed, directing a platoon of guards, pointing out the general direction they should run.
They shot at her and missed wildly. Ngo, a quick learner after her firearm mishap, used the fulminant name. It missed too, but only barely, singing some of her hair. Anna jumped off the road, ran into a pile of brush. Her slight advantage was that the Director General couldn't really run through scrub in that dress, and was about 20 years older than she.
The fulminant name was short range, and she was increasing the distance between herself and Miss Ngo with every step. She ran through bushes, through a creek, anything she thought would deter the lady whose terrible pounding was still on the fringes of her consciousness. Who are you? Ngo shouted at her from afar. Obviously, Anna didn't say anything back. I won't hurt you. I know you won't believe me, but we're on the same side. This is important, I swear. Please, I just want to talk. Right. She believed that one. Just before she got out of range, Ngo went silent, started saying the fulminant name again. Anna braced herself. It was anybody's guess whether the Director General could hit from this distance, and though the name was rarely fatal, it would certainly knock her out long enough to be captured. She ran as fast as she could, trying to get a couple extra meters before... Then a gust of wind flew all around her, knocked Malia off her feet. The tempestuous name? But how? She kept running, ran until the Director General and her horrible base had receded into the brightening horizon. The back of a pickup truck took her as far as Sacramento, and a train took her to Oakland. In Oakland, she broke her invisibility, got a hotel room, and lay in bed without talking or moving or really thinking for a few hours. Then she woke up, took a shower, and bought herself a nice breakfast with the last of the hotel till money. She was a little surprised to see that Sarah was no longer in her bag when she woke, but only a little. Let the conspirators play their games. She was done. If she hadn't already been a fugitive, she was one now. Director General Malia Ngo herself had seen her. If she didn't already know who she was, she would soon figure it out. And someone else. Someone who could seize Sarah from underneath Unsong's nose, was manipulating her in a way she didn't much like. Ithaca wasn't safe, her parents' house wasn't safe, nowhere in the Untied States or the global community was safe for her. But there were other options. She started walking west. She walked past the hills, walked past old houses, walked past the lake and the Emeryville Mall, walked past the harbor. She reached the Bay Bridge, went invisible, walked right past the warning signs, past the barricades and the guard towers. In front of her, a few towers peeked out of the billowing fog. The eye in the Transamerica Pyramid fixed its gaze on her for an instant, its emotions, if it had them, as inscrutable as ever. She was finished with the lands of men. She was going to San Francisco. There's a story about an old man walking down a beach. He sees a child picking up starfish and throwing them into the water. The man asks the child what he's doing, and the child says that these starfish are stuck on land at low tide. They can't survive out of water, so he's throwing them back in the ocean to save them. The old man says, "But surely you know that there are millions of starfish just on this one beach? And there are thousands of beaches all around the world. And this same thing happens at high tide, day after day, forever. You'll never be able to make a difference. And the child just picks up another starfish, throws it into the ocean, and said, "Made a difference to that one." I remember when I told the Comet King this story. He got very quiet, and finally I asked what he was thinking. Still half lost in thought, he answered, "Even a small change to the moon's orbit could prevent the tidal cycle. Moving the moon would take immense energy, but the wrathful name has the power of a hydrogen bomb and can be written on a piece of paper weighing only a fraction of a gram. The Saturn V has a payload of about 10,000 kilograms, so perhaps 20 million instances of the wrathful name. No. It still wouldn't be enough. We'd need a better rocket. Perhaps if you could combine a methane LOX full-flow system with a prayer invoking the kinetic name." He picked up a napkin and started sketching, and was diverted from his trance only when I reminded him that starfish had evolved for life in the inner tidal zone and were probably fine. He flashed me one of his fierce smiles, and I couldn't tell whether or not he had been joking all along. An enterprising member of the household staff pocketed the napkin and sold it to Celestial Virgin for an undisclosed sum. The Comet King's partially completed sketch became the basis of all modern rocketry. Sohu West, the Comet King, a hagiography, October 11th, 1990, Gulf of Mexico. Runes of glowing fire troubled Sohu's dreams, and she woke up the next morning to find them inscribed upon her skin in big dark welts. She ran out of her cottage, almost fell off the edge of the cloud. "Uriel! Uriel! What's happening?" "The ice is calving in Antarctica. I have been busy all morning trying to prevent the icebergs from disrupting shipping lanes. It is very annoying. I cannot even remember why I put a continent at the South Pole. Nobody ever uses it. No to me? Look." The angel scanned her with his flaming golden eyes. "Oh yes, yesterday, when I let Thamiel torture you, it was because... I'm sorry. You did not blame me or yell at me. You trusted me. People do not usually do that. It was very strange. You trusted me even though you were hurt very badly. Thank you. Uriel, the things all over my skin. I wanted to do something nice for you. The other day you said, please don't let me die. So I thought I would do that for you. Now you are immortal. It was very hard." Sohu stared again at the characters on her skin, then freaked out. The angel watched her flail with something between curiosity and discomfort. The welts will fade in a few days." "That wasn't what I meant."
When I said not to let me die, I meant I didn't want to die right then. Not I didn't want to die ever.
"Oh, well, if you ever feel like dying, let me know and I will kill you. That is actually much easier than granting immortality."
Oh.
"Uriel, you don't understand. Is this going to do something horrible, like I'm going to grow older and older until I become shriveled and tiny and turn into a grasshopper?"
"No, please do not worry. I made sure you will not grow older."
Sohu stopped flailing. Now she was very, very still. "Wait, not grow older at all?"
"Yes."
"It is a very good immortality ritual." "You mean I am going to be 8 years old forever?" "Uriel, take it back! What do you mean, take it back? You want to grow old and die?" "Yes." She stopped, a look of horror coming over her face. "Wait! I mean, no! Not now!" Then, "But yes, eventually. I don't see why you should want to age. You would become old and senile and probably terrible at remembering Kabbalah. Uriel, I know you don't always understand humans very well, but trust me, this is really important. Take it back now." Actually, though the flow of unconditioned light emanating from the upper spheres is in theory perfectly matched by the flow of conditioned light reflecting from the lower, the channels are not symmetrical and by a spiritual law, isomorphic to the second law of thermodynamics. It is not always possible to retrace a particular combination of spiritual paths without solving an NP-complete problem with a size approximately equal to the number of atoms in the universe, times the number of divine Nitsutzot. Are you saying you can't take it back? Maybe. Sort of. Yes. Oh God, oh God, oh God. I'm going to be 8 years old forever, said Sohu, and she started crying. I am sorry. You're sure there's no way to change this and make me not 8 years old forever, or to add back aging, or... Possibly I could manually increment your age on each birthday. It would be very inelegant, but... Possibly. I don't think I am a very good friend. It's okay. You didn't know... You tried to help, I guess. You seem so scared. I was. I wanted to help.
I felt bad that I did not save you. Why? Why did you let Tamiel do that to me? You said you could have killed him. Why didn't you just kill him and save me? And then you wouldn't have had to do some weird ritual to me.
And now I have to be 8 years old forever.
8 years old is not a bad age.
I have to listen to everyone's prayers, and they become really weird once people hit puberty. Why, Uriel? Why? I am trying to keep the world from ending. For some reason, Sohu chose that moment to calm down. As if discussion of the end of the world were more normal, an island of normality she could hold on to. And why is the world going to end if you kill Thamiel? A long time ago there was a war in heaven. All of the archangels fought Thamiel, and Thamiel won. I did not like this result, so I added a new structure at the ontological base of the universe, a layer that reinterprets Adam Cadman. I converted the world from a substrate of divine light to a substrate of mathematics. This prevented angels and demons from existing in any more than a metaphorical way. When the divine light entered the universe, I channeled it into a reservoir so that it did not interfere with the clockwork. And then we crashed Apollo 8 into the edge of the world. You went beyond the edge of the world and recited the Bible. You injected the code for the original system via a buffer overflow attack. My system was catastrophically destabilized. Even drawing on the reserves of divine light I had collected over millennia, I was only able to partially stabilize it. Science and mathematics still work, and the supernatural is limited to a fraction of its true power. But it requires a constant infusion of divine light to maintain even this limited functionality. Can your reservoir of divine light run out? Yes. At the current rate, it will run out in about 50 years. Each great miracle I perform beyond the range of my ordinary power depletes it further. Thamiel hoped I would call upon the divine light to kill him. Then he would recoalesce a few weeks or months later, unharmed. It is impossible to kill him permanently. He is a facet of God, and every time I kill him temporarily, it requires so much divine light that it takes years off the lifespan of the universe. This is his plan. To taunt me and trick me into expending my resources and hasten the collapse of the celestial machinery. What happens when it collapses? Human technology ceases to work. Thamiel becomes invincible. The world ends. Oh, so how do we prevent that? I am not sure that we do. Can't you repair the machine? Or get it to run without divine light? Or find another way to replenish divine light, or something? No. I have spent eons of subjective time considering these possibilities. They are impossible. The sky is cracked. The structure of the higher worlds is made illegible. The machine cannot be fully repaired. It is impossible. Even if I tried, now that Thamiel understands its purpose, he would certainly stop me. So kill him with the divine light. Then do it before he recoalesces. He is the left hand of God. There are many things he can do without a corporeal body. Why? Why does God have a screwy left hand that wants to destroy everything? You should read Isaac Luria. I've read Isaac Luria, so what? Why did God allow the vessels to shatter in the first place? That is very complicated. So what? So you're just going to hang around for 50 years until you run out of charge. Your machine goes dead and Thamiel takes over the universe? Maybe the Comet King will come up with something before then. That's your plan? It is a good plan. Sohu nodded. Okay, fair. Waiting for him to come in and solve every problem has always worked in the past. But still, what about you? Can't you at least try to help? I run continental drift and guide the butterfly
migration and keep icebergs in the right place and prevent people from boiling goats in their mother's milk. It is difficult and I'm good at it, and it allows the world to endure that much longer. I will not beat myself up
over failing to do the impossible.
Matthew 19:26, with God all things are possible. What? Out with it. I have been in this universe 6,000 years. I have fought the devil. I have rewritten the laws of reality. I have done many interesting things. What? And I have never seen anything to convince me that God plays an active part in the universe. His role seems to be entirely ontological. You can't be a deist. You're an archangel. I'm not a very good archangel. What about San Francisco? God can have a right hand as well as a left hand. I see no evidence that either is controlled by any head. What about Metatron? A voice of God who never talks. A perfect symbol. You won against Thamiel. That was a miracle. Don't you think that God was involved in that? The Sephiroth were involved. Those are sort of a part of God, but they were not in a very active role. They mostly just sat there as I rewrote them. You know what I mean. God created atom Cadman, the fundamental structure that binds everything together. He breathed fire into the structure and made it exist and made all things happen according to its plan. But that plan does not follow our rules or our hopes. When a human machine breaks, when a plane's engines stop working, and it falls from the air, God does not reach down and save it. The structure continues to its preordained conclusion. I see no reason to believe a failure of my own machine will be any different. It will merely be more final. Well, I think you're wrong. Father believes God will save us. He believes that he will save us and plans to credit God. There is a difference. I believe God will save us. Think about how fantastically unlikely all of this is. The universe, your machinery, everything Father's doing. You think it's all a coincidence? Yes. Book of Lamentations 3:24. The Lord is my portion. Therefore I will place my hope in him. I do not think that worked very well, based on what they titled their book. Sohu snorted. All right then, you're going to teach me Kabbalah, but I'm going to teach you to have faith. How to do knock-knock jokes properly and how to have faith. That's what I'm going to teach you. I am sorry. I am not very good at faith for an archangel. Sohu said nothing. Uriel turned away and went back to running the universe. Let's play Twister. Let's play Risk. See you in heaven if you make the list. Ramal, man on the sphere. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, until we've landed on the moon, of preventing this decade from ending. At Vessel of Spirit Want, they say that March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. March 1969 had been more like one of those biblical angels with 4 lion heads and 4 lamb heads, and a couple dragon heads for good measure, all spinning within a gigantic flaming wheel, and if you met its gaze for too long, then you died. Entire weeks repeated themselves, or skipped around, or moved backwards. There was a week when the weather stopped, and it was an even 22 degrees Celsius across the entire planet. The heavens turned gray, and were replaced by a message saying, Sky.systemate not found, please repent transgressions and try again. All animal cries were replaced by discordant buzzing sounds. Nobody knew how long it lasted. Probably had been different lengths of time for each person. Each shunted on their own separate timelines into weird calendrical eddies and whirls. Some people who had started off middle-aged ended the month with gray hair and soft, infinitely sorrowful voices. Others seemed to have grown younger. Most people looked about the same. But you could tell things had happened they didn't want to talk about. Days repeated dozens of times, or weeks that happened backwards. Or moments when timelessness had briefly encroached on time, and for an infinitely long moment they had touched eternity. The bizarre communiques from the Archangel Uriel had become an accepted feature of daily life. Sometimes they would appear in the sky, or writ in blood on the surface of the moon, or spoken in unexpected phone calls to world leaders with unlisted numbers, or spotted on vegetables that had grown to enormous size. The news was rarely good. Due to system resources shortages, the island of Taiwan has been cancelled. We apologize for the inconvenience. The number 8 will be down from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning for emergency repairs. Please do not perform any calculations that require the number 8 during that time. Also, please turn all clock faces away from you, especially if they include the number 8. Thank you for your cooperation. As compensation for your troubles, we have cured all valvular heart disease. Humans now have only 180 bones. We expect the new bones to be up to 50% more efficient and to perform at the same high standards as the old 206 bone system. The prevalence of skeletal diseases will not change. However, different people will have them. If you think you have a new skeletal disease, please consult your doctor. Please avoid the area where Taiwan used to be. In addition, please avoid areas close to where Taiwan used to be. In particular, the East China Sea, the South China Sea, the Philippine Sea, Japan, Korea, and all parts of China within 1,000 miles of a coast. Thank you for your cooperation. Attention. Due to a scale back in coverage, the moral arc of the universe no longer bends toward justice. We apologize for the inconvenience. 71 days after the chaos had begun, a message from Uriel appeared and raised welts on the skin of all of the livestock in the world. The following have been cancelled as part of the recent cutbacks, the last week in September. The emotion ennui, the the gallbladder. All numbers between 405,668,922 and 407,215,810. Jazz. The Matterhorn, all Dravidian languages except Telugu. The crescent moon, white wine, amethyst, all varieties of cousin beyond the first.
The system will regain temporary stability after the current round of changes. Thank you for bearing with us during this difficult time. The next day was April 1st. The long march was finally over. Things weren't back to normal, not by a long shot. Large areas had apparently been depopulated, whether by direct action of the Archangel or by failure of their communities to survive the tribulations, no one knew. A good amount of technological infrastructure had just plain stopped working, apparently no longer supported by the leaner, less flashy laws of physics Uriel had been forced to scale down to. The Russians were saying awful things. Demons pouring forth from the ground, Yakutsk, the site of a great massacre, fires that could be seen for hundreds of miles. The cracks in the sky had grown noticeably wider. But for the first time, people were starting to feel some optimism, like when you're starting to come back from a really bad drug trip, and the walls are still covered in snakes. But they're smaller snakes now, and your skin is still bubbling, but it's bubbling less, and your grip on the real world is a little better, and you start to wonder what's for breakfast. 2. Richard Nixon, who had told Kissinger about 30 times that this was not what he had signed up for, realized that people needed a goal, something to shake them back into public consciousness, make them realize that America was still on its feet and the government was still in control. So he appeared on national television, which was working during even-numbered hours only. The eggheads hadn't quite figured out why that was, but they assured him it would be fixable, and declared that the country would commit itself to achieving the goal before this year is out of landing a man on the giant crystal sphere surrounding the world and returning him safely to Earth. It had been a politically savvy move. NASA had a lunar module all ready to go and sitting in a warehouse. After what had happened last time they'd tried to get to the moon, the newly discovered crystal sphere presented an attractive alternative target. But it wasn't just political grandstanding. Breaking the crystal sphere had caused all these problems in the first place. If they could figure out what it was and why it was there, maybe they could fix it. And if there was an entity beyond the crystal sphere, his advisors had warned him against using the G word. Sounded too unscientific. Then maybe it would help, if asked nicely. NASA didn't want to go in blind. First in May, then June, they launched manned missions to investigate the extent and composition of the sphere. As far as they could tell, it was about 250,000 miles in radius, centered on the Earth, and made of perfect, flawless crystal, except in the vicinity of the cracks. The eidolons of stars and planets seemed to be projected on it in some kind of holographic manner that gave them the illusion of depth. In early June, NASA told Nixon it had reached the limit of what it could determine about the sphere from remote observation. On July 16, 1969, President Nixon traveled to Cape Canaveral, where he met personally with 3 astronauts whom NASA had assured him were the best of the best. He wished them Godspeed and told them that the hopes of American people and the people of the whole world were fixed on them. Later that afternoon, Apollo 11 took off. 4 days and 250,000 miles later, the lunar module Eagle detached from its mothership. Inside were Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who had accepted the task of landing on the crystal sphere and taking mankind's first steps upon another heavenly body. Such as it was. The descent proved more treacherous than expected, and the two came perilously close to running out of fuel for the thrusters and crashing into the crystal at enormous velocity. But with 25 seconds to spare, they touched down at the chosen landing site right on the edge of one of the humongous cracks. "Tranquility Base here," said Armstrong. "The Eagle has landed." There had been a brief debate in the Nixon White House over whether or not it was tasteful to plant the American flag on the giant crystal sphere surrounding the world. The argument against was that the sphere appeared to be some sort of celestial mechanism, created directly by God that either separated Earth from heaven or in some complicated sense was itself heaven, and that for a human nation to claim heaven might be literally the most hubris it was even conceptually possible to display. The argument in favor of planting the flag was America. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the crystal sphere and planted the flag. "That's one small step for a man," he said, "and one giant leap for mankind." The formalities being over, it was time to get down to business. Armstrong and Aldrin hauled from their lunar module a great spool of cable,
which they wheeled across the surprisingly smooth crystal a few dozen meters to the edge of the crack. Armstrong stared down. "Houston, I'm looking into the crack," he relayed over his radio. "It's very bright, maybe not as bright as the sun, but close. I can't see anything down there. The edge of the cliff is almost perfectly vertical. It seems a couple 100 meters wide. I can just barely see the other side. It looks about the same. There's no terrain here, no irregularity. Houston, I think the light source might be only a couple of meters down. It's like a skin. I think we can reach the light with what we've got." There followed a short argument over which of the two had to actually climb down into the thing. Aldrin won the argument with his very reasonable position that if Armstrong loved being first to do things so much, maybe he should show the same kind of initiative when it was something important and scary instead of just a photo op. So Commander Neil Armstrong attached the cable to his spacesuit, took a climbing hook in both hands, and slowly began to descend into the crack while Aldrin peered down from above.
"Houston, I'm in the crack. I'm down about 3 meters now out of 100 meters of cable. The light is noticeably closer. I don't think it's far off."
"I think it's an object, or a barrier, or a transition or something." "Houston, the light source is definitely getting closer. I think it's only another couple of meters down." "Roger that, Commander Armstrong. Colonel Aldrin, is everything all right from your perspective?" "Houston, cable is fixed in place. Commander Armstrong is still within visual range." "Roger that, Colonel Aldrin. Houston, I'm going to touch the light source with my climbing hook and see if anything happens." "Proceed as you see fit, Commander." The hook passes through the light source. I've pulled it back and it's still intact. It seems to be like a skin or a transition zone of some sort. Like I said before. "Roger that, Commander Armstrong. I'm going to touch the light source now. I don't feel anything. My finger passes right through." "Colonel Aldrin, from where you are standing, any change in the light source?" "No, Houston. I can see Commander Armstrong. There's no disturbance or change. The light source is still uniform throughout the crack." "Houston, I'm going to climb into the light source. Proceed as you see fit, Commander." "Ground control to Commander Armstrong. Come in, Commander Armstrong. Ground control to Colonel Aldrin. Come in, Colonel Aldrin." "Colonel Aldrin here, Houston. Commander Armstrong has disappeared below the light barrier. Ground control to Commander Armstrong. Come in, Commander Armstrong." He's not answering. "Houston, I'm going to pull up the cable. Bring him back." "Do that immediately, Colonel." "Houston, the end of the cable is no longer attached to Commander Armstrong." "Fuck. I never should have let him. I'm going down after him." "No, Colonel Aldrin. This is ground control. You are ordered to collect the cable and leave the crack. I repeat, collect the cable and leave the crack." "Wait, what if I lower the cable back down to him? Maybe if he's down there, he can grab onto—" "Colonel Aldrin, I repeat, your direct order is to collect the cable and leave the crack." "Houston, this is Commander Armstrong." "Commander Armstrong, come in! Commander Armstrong, is something wrong?" "No, Houston, nothing is wrong." "All right. We're going to get Colonel Aldrin to lower down the cable for you and—" "No, Houston, literally. Nothing is wrong. Nothing." "Commander Armstrong, is everything okay?" "Exactly, Houston. Everything is okay. Nothing is wrong. Nothing has ever been wrong anywhere. The cosmos is like a flawless jewel, each of whose facets is another flawless jewel, and so on to infinity. Except there is no jewel. It's all light. No, there isn't even light. From within time, you can't see any of it. But when you step outside into eternity, it's all so full. It's so beautiful, Houston." "Commander Armstrong, you're not well. Colonel Aldrin is lowering down the cable." "You really think I'm still in the crack? Listen, Houston, the Zimtzum, the Lurianic contraction of God to create the world, from a higher perspective, it wasn't a contraction at all. It was an expansion, an unfolding of divinity into new possibilities. The vessels didn't shatter. They rearranged themselves into shapes that only become apparent from a pleroma beyond any dimensions, but containing the potential for all of them." "Houston, is this making sense?" "Commander Armstrong, you are ordered to return to the ship." "Houston, William Blake was right about everything." "Commander Armstrong, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. 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 Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Holy, 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 Commander Armstrong. Holy, 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 Commander Armstrong. Holy, 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 holy,
Houston, I've loaded cable
As far as it will go. It's dangling about 70 meters into the light zone. I'm not getting any indication that Commander Armstrong is going to take it. Roger that, Colonel Aldrin. Please return to the ship. Do you read me, Colonel Aldrin? Loud and clear, Houston. 3. When I was 10 years old, I got my first ham radio. A ham radio is a treasure when you are 10. I listened to boats off the coast, heard the reports from the ranger stations in the nearby forests, even picked up the chatter between policemen patrolling the local streets. One day, I turned to a new frequency, and I heard a strange sound, a single pure note, unlike any I'd ever heard before. The sound was, ooh. I brought the radio to my uncle, and I asked him what station that was, and he told me it was the frequency NASA used for its communications once upon a time. Then a man had taken a radio tuned to that band into a crack in the sky, and it had started broadcasting with such power that it drowned out all the other radio noise, and the whole frequency had to be abandoned. But what was that unearthly note? My uncle told me it was Neil Armstrong, who had passed beyond time into eternity, praising God forever. End of Book 1.